Three functions are given, f of x, g of x, and h of x. Which inequality is true for large values of x? All right, so it gives a function less than another function is less than another function. So what we're trying to do is compare these functions to see as x increases to very large numbers, what's going to happen, which one's going to exceed the others. So if we look at this, f of x is a quadratic equation. We know this because it has an x squared term. G of x is a linear equation because it's got an x to the first power. And h of x is an exponential equation because the variable is the exponent. So one of the state standards tells us that we need to know that an exponential equation is going to eventually exceed these other equations. So let's review that standard for a second. All right, so the standard says, know that a quantity increasing exponentially eventually exceeds or passes a quantity increasing of a linear, quadratic, or cubic function. So that means this h of x is going to eventually pass both of these other two functions for very large x values. So we can determine that h of x has to be on the end, right? It's going to be the largest number. So we can go ahead and eliminate b and c. Now we just have to determine whether g of x is less than f of x or f of x is less than g of x. And again, we're talking about for just really large numbers. So a linear equation, we know that a linear equation is going to grow at a constant rate. So the slope or the rate of change is going to be the same for the entire function. The quadratic function is going to be squared. So this function is eventually going to pass the linear function. And then, of course, we've already determined that the quadratic, linear, and cubic functions are all going to be passed by the exponential equation. So just looking at this and thinking about what we're going to see, A makes the most sense just because of the type of functions you have. But let's look at these graphically and get a better idea of what they look like. So let's graph these on Desmos. So if I go to Desmos here, I can see that I've already typed these three equations in, and just looking at it at the screen we have here, it looks like the quadratic grows faster and then linear and then the exponential. But if you start zooming, you have to zoom way in, but we're talking about large numbers. You can see that eventually the exponential passes the linear. And then if you continue, you can see how that exponential graph is getting closer to the quadratic, and it's going to eventually pass the quadratic as well. But it's going to be a very, very large number to do so. So it's good to know the facts. It's good to know that what the standard says. And it's good to know just basic information about what linear, quadratic, and exponential functions look like and how they work, so that this is a question that hopefully is not too difficult to answer. So A is the best answer.